And it's a rainy Monday afternoon right here in Lagos, Nigeria, wherever you're watching from. Great to have you. Coming up on Business Incorporated. We're seeing North Africa now. Inflation in Egypt hits a record high in August at 39.7%. And Kenya makes a U-turn on $2 billion Eurobond buyback plan. And the US dollar retreats ahead of inflation data as the yen soars and US comments. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Ladi Williams. First off, as always, let's kick off with the market, starting on the African continent. Now we'll see the NGX there, big pullback at intraday, 0.55%, losing that 68,000 level at this time. South Africa's index, though, 74,185, 0.72% up there. On the flip side, we're seeing North Africa, the EGX 30 down a big 1.50%, while Kenya closed positive on Friday, 0.73%, snapping the losses we saw, still below that 100 points for the all-share index. Let's take a look at what's happening in the Middle East now. We see Middle Eastern markets, that's mostly positive sentiment we see there. In the UAE, 0.18% up for the Abu Dhabi index at 9,707 points. Marginal increase with the Dubai index there, 0.03%. Other markets we track in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia up 0.07%, and Qatari index, that's the biggest mover up there, 0.55%. Let's take a look at what's happening in London now. We have Juliana standing by right there. Great to have you, Juliana. So it's all about jobs right there in the UK. We see reports thousands of UK jobs might be lost with the Wilko rescue deal has collapsed. What's the reason for this collapse?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Good afternoon, Laddie. The Wilko collapse story keeps on developing, and we've had a really negative development for the 10,000 odd staff who are waiting to see whether or not they have a job for Christmas. And the announcement is that a gentleman, a Canadian billionaire who goes by the name of Doug Putman, now Putman Investments, which is his firm, pretty well known for saving embattled high street brands. Any of our viewers in the UK will be familiar with HMV. That went under, but the Putman family managed to resurrect that brand. Sadly, this won't be the case for Wilko. We were expecting the Putman Investments to take a large chunk of their intellectual property and their estate, potentially rescuing 400 stores, which would have saved about 11,000 jobs. That deal has just collapsed. I believe Putman Investments have released a statement to PwC, who are the administrators overseeing what's going to be the future of Wilko. They've basically said that when they were looking at the long-term opportunities for Wilko, they just didn't see that it was worth their investment. So that's really disappointing. We know that already 1,600 jobs at Wilko have gone. Last week, there was a small lifeline put in place by B&M, which is a similar sort of discount retailer in the UK. They agreed to buy 51 Wilko stores to the tune of £51 million or £13 million. But yes, the developing news out of the UK is that unfortunately we are expecting significant job losses as Putman Investments have pulled out of the deal to rescue this embattled retailer.
I was definitely rooting for Wilko there, but yeah, big job losses there. We'll still keep tracking that story. But on the flip side, we see BMW, they're announcing £600 million investment for the all-electric mini production in the UK. This should help secure jobs.
Absolutely. This is a massive vote of confidence for the UK car sector. Kind of struggled when it came out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we've seen for the past 6 months, UK car sales, despite the cost of living, people are still forking out for a new car. Lots of people, of course, investing in electric vehicles because by 2030, it's going to be illegal to purchase any brand new petrol or diesel car. So this morning, we had an announcement from the German car dealer They have said that they're going to invest, I believe, up to £600 million at their already existing car plant in Oxford. As you quite rightly said, this money is likely going to go towards the manufacturing of their Mini, which is going to be an all-electric Mini. And then, of course, last week, I think I was discussing it with you or Inni, Laddie, about this new multi-million pound electric charger plant in Birmingham. So certainly this Conservative government are trying to take leaps and bounds in ensuring that they are one of the world leaders when it comes to clean cars. But of course, you know, the most important thing is who it trickles down to, which is the locals and the people. And the fact that this £600 million investment is definitely going to secure thousands of jobs for the years to come. So some good news there.
Right, all about clean cars this time. I'm not talking about hygiene at this point, but how the market's looking
Very
in the
expensive,
UK.
these cars.
Very expensive.
Very, very expensive, Laddie. The markets are in tip-top shape. There was an announcement last week by Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England governor. He kind of hinted towards members of the Treasury Select Committee that the consistent hikes of interest rates may be over. And I think, even though that was said last week, that sentiment is still very much in the markets today. At intraday on Monday afternoon, the FTSE All-Share is up by 0.24%. The FTSE 100 up 2 by 0.34%, in the FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's up by nearly 0.5%. In the currencies market, the British pound is currently trading up 2 against the US dollar by 0.33%, up against the euro as well by 0.17%, and the British pound is trading up against the Japanese yen at intraday by 0.04%, Laddie.
All right, pound looking strong at intraday. Thank you so much, Juliana. It was great having your updates.
Yeah.
All right, now let's take a look at what's happening in Europe now. See, with the weekend's G20 summit over, U.S. President Joe Biden headed further east with a visit to Vietnam. Lars Holter now has the details from DW. Great to have you, Lars. So how was Biden received in Hanoi?
Thanks for having me. It was quite a welcome for Biden in Vietnam. The ruling Communist Party organized a ceremony that included school children waving American flags and honor guards carrying bayoneted rifles, military honors, and that's half a century after the two countries were, of course, engaged in a bitter war. And it's not just symbolic. It was very clear that both countries are working on a business relationship here. To start off, Vietnam is elevating relations with the U.S. to the level of a comprehensive strategic partner. That is Vietnam's highest tier of international partnership. Biden welcomed the move. He called Vietnam a friend, a reliable partner, and a responsible member of the international community. And most specifically, he says he hopes progress can be made on climate, the economy, and other issues.
And what is the new partnership all about?
So we're looking at trade here, of course. Now, U.S. trade with Vietnam has already accelerated since 2019, but there are limits to how much further it can progress without improvements to Vietnam's infrastructure, to worker skills there and to its governance. But there was a lot of talk about diversifying supply chains and for the U.S. to help the country play a much more important role in that. Given the geography and geopolitical developments, of course, over the past few years, it's hard to not immediately think of China here. Obviously, the US, as well as much of the Western world, are working towards diversifying their supply chains out of China to cut their dependency on that country. Much of that has to do with the COVID pandemic, but also with pandemic-related shutdowns of factories and ports that have threatened economies around the world. Another part of the West diversifying out of China has to do with leadership there and the ever more authoritarian Xi Jinping. Long story short, Vietnam is likely playing a major part in the U.S. move away from China. On a more concrete level, the semiconductor business is probably one way the countries could work together. The U.S. government has budgeted $100 million per year for 5 years under the CHIPS Act to support semiconductor supply chains globally, and a large portion of that could very well go to Vietnam. Traveling with Biden were executives from some of the tech giants, Google, Intel, Marvel, global founders. Also, Boeing, however, and that of course touches on another market, Vietnam Airlines, has agreed to buy 50 737 MAX jets. That's a deal worth $10 billion.
All right, Laz, what are investors focusing on today's market?
Yeah, we're in an interesting situation right now with a clear split in markets last week. U.S. markets finished the week with some strength. China ended with losses. And it's all driven not so much by company data, but by economic numbers. Most investors are keeping an eye on anything inflation. In the U.S., there's more data on the docket this week, namely the consumer price index on Wednesday. And markets are hoping for a reading that will ease concerns about the Federal Reserve's interest rate plans. Similar situation, by the way, right here in Europe, where the ECB will announce its interest rate decision on Thursday.
All right, thank you so much, Lars Halter, right there in Berlin. Thank you. And after all the stories now, the president of the Association of Eurobond Diaspora, South Africa, it's Dr. Olushona Agbeyi, says there's no nation in the world that can develop without the diaspora. Agbeyi added that Nigerian government should foster a favorable environment for entrepreneurs with the country. He highlighted that such an environment will encourage talent to remain within Nigeria and actively contribute to its economic development. Our correspondent, Innocent Samosa, reports.
The World Bank's latest migration and development brief shows that remittance that flows to low and middle income countries are estimated to grow by 1.4% to $656 billion in 2023 as economic activity remittances source countries is set to soften, limiting employment and wage gains for migrants. The Association of Eurobond in Diaspora commemorates its 5th Heritage Day. The organization, born and formally launched on October 18, 2016, by a united group of Eurobonds, brought a spirit of celebration with dance, rhythmic drums, and traditional attire. The event was honored by Professor Wale Agbeshola from the University of South Africa, who delivered a speech on the role of remittances in driving development in Nigeria.
Ideally, like in the case of Somalia, government can trace specifically where remittances goes every year. But in Nigeria, nobody knows where remittances go. The only thing they know is the money comes in, and immediately the money comes into the account, people withdraw it, and that is the end of it.
The vice chairman of the Association of Eurobonds and Diaspora South Africa, Professor Sunday Ojo, passionately underscored the dire need for effective leadership in Nigeria.
It's ironic that is the situation, but point blank, what's the challenge with Nigeria is the political leadership. Maybe it extends to some other African country, but it's more pronounced in Nigeria.
Now a message for Nigerians in diaspora from the president of AISA, Dr. Olushona Agbeyi.
The people at home, the government, luckily we have a new government in Nigeria now, they must govern well and make everything conducive so that people in diaspora, not only in South Africa, globally, we say, okay, let's contribute certain percentage. Look at it, the percentage that people give back home is about 5% of their income. You see about 95% back to where they stay, where they reside. That's 5%. But can you imagine if the diaspora contribute about 25% back home? They're going to be a huge development.
We had the privilege to speak to some attendees about the importance of this event and the theme.
How are you feeling? Of course, definitely I feel good, it's not all the time that we get to celebrate our culture and our tradition. So when you have the opportunity to dress up for an occasion like this, you don't want to miss out.
I'm so excited about this because this gives us opportunity to showcase our heritage and to showcase who we are and our culture and our values.
Members of the Yoruba community in Pretoria, South Africa, expressed their conviction that this event plays a vital role in preserving their culture. From Pretoria, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
Thanks, Innocent. Well, still ahead, we'll analyze the African Union addition to G20, what it means for the African economy. That's in a moment. To stay with us. Welcome back. Well, in a significant development on the global stage, the Group of 20, that's comprised of the world's 20 leading economies, has extended an invitation to the African Union to become a permanent member. Well, let's gauge the expected impact now with Mr. Oladipo Ajayi as a head fixed income, Chapel Hill Denham. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Good morning, Ladi. Thank you for having me here.
Well, good afternoon. Well, what is the significance of the African Union becoming a permanent member of the G20, both for Africa and for the broader international community?
Well, I think for broader international community, Africa is bringing a young population of about 1.2 trillion onto the table. And we all know that for any economy to actually develop, you need strength of the youth, and also you need other factors. And one of the reasons why we tend to see a lot of countries opening their doors for most Africans to actually come in is because of the fact that you need young people to actually grow your economy, and most developed nations are already aging population. So Africa is bringing young population to the table. And aside that, Africa is actually rich in natural resources. And these are some of the things that Africa is currently bringing to the table. And I think that's one of the reasons why the G20 is actually excited to actually have the bloc of Africa on board. On the part of the G20, what do they bring to the table to Africa? And that's also very key now. I think that we are talking to a group that are currently, they control about 85% of the global GDP. And in terms of international trade, they actually control about 75% of international trade. And currently, the population of the G20 is about 65% of the global population. And by the time you have the African bloc on it, it means that it's taken into very close to 80% of the global population. So it tells you that that is where decisions are made. It tells you that it's on that table that decisions are taken that could either mark or make the life of people in Africa. And having Africa on board is actually very good to hear you, because what it means is that you are party to decision making now. So it means that no one can just take decisions that will, at the end of the day, have negative impact on your jurisdiction. So I think it's a very good one, and it's a win-win for both parties.
And how do you see, this impacting how African countries get loans from international financial institutions? We know the AU has complained about the, high cost, for African countries, trying to borrow now, leading to that issue of debt trap in Africa.
I think the admittance of Africa to the table means that Africa is now becoming part of the power bloc globally. And if you know, before now, Africa has been one of the zone, the signature of all eyes. Everybody wants to be part of, want to be friends with Africans. We saw how the United States were trying to, we saw what China also trying to penetrate Africa. We've seen in the recent past how Russia and Sweden are trying to actually make an impact in Africa now, and also France is also doing the same. And one of the things why everyone is actually looking at Africa is because of the benefits that Africa actually can bring to the table. Like I mentioned earlier on, Africa has actually rich in natural resources. And part of the problem of Africa is the fact that we actually export these natural resources rather than allowing most of these foreign guys to actually situate business in African zones that will further create employment and also better the life of Africans. And the fact that we are now on the table means that most of the international banks will now reckon with us on a better ground than the way they used to. And another thing also is that Africa needs to speak in one voice. We need to actually speak to this thing, to this situation as one. It means that whatever the EU is saying, it has to be what every member country is also abiding with. And I remember sometimes EU also complained about the rating agencies, that they actually bias in the way that which they actually undo the ratings for African countries. And to some extent, I think they are right, because you tend to see the rating of some of African countries, and you wonder how come, and when you can actually see other developed nations that are also in the same shoe, getting a better rating than Africa. But with one voice, it gives us a better bargaining power to actually be able to speak with its international financial institution. And like you actually rightly mentioned, it gives us very good room for bargain a greater depth and also better rates.
All right, definitely. We'll keep tracking development with this new addition. Thank you so much, Mr. Oladipo Ajayi, head fixed income Chapel Hill Denham. It's great having your perspective today.
You're welcome, bro.
All right, now let's take a look at some other stories now in North Africa. We see in August, Egypt witnessed a troubling surge in inflation, reaching alarming levels, reported by the Central Agency for Mobilization and Statistics as CAMPAS. The annual inflation rate soared to a staggering 39.7%, a worrying escalation from July's record of 38.2%. This troubling trend underscores the financial strain endured by Egypt, marked by a steadily devaluing currency. One of the most concerning aspects of the inflationary surge is a sharp increase in food and drink prices, which rose by a staggering 71.9% compared to August 2022. However, there's a glimmer of relief on a monthly basis, with data indicating a slight decline as inflation in Egypt stood at 1.6% in August, down from 1.9% in July. That's according to Bloomberg. And Kenya's National Treasury has announced its reluctance to pursue the buyback of a portion of the $2 billion Eurobond set to mature in June 2024. This decision is rooted in the perceived strong confidence that investors have in the government's fiscal policy stance. As a result of this stance, the Kenyan government may have to allocate about approximately $135.6 million for interest payments on bonds during the fiscal year, considering the current exchange rate of 145 Kenyan shillings to the dollar. Kenya has raised a total of $2.75 billion through two tranches, including a 10-year bond at a 6.78% interest rate and a 5-year issuance at 5.87%. A portion of the 5-year paper was repaid using the proceeds from another $2.1 billion Eurobond issued in May 2019. And now let's get a check on the oil market. Now we see oil prices there ease in early trade today. Economic concerns in China weighed on fuel demand and outlook, although see Brent stayed perched above that $90 barrel level, supported by tightening supplies after Saudi Arabia and Russia extended supply cuts. Brent fell 49 cents to $90.16 a barrel, while US WTI crude now trading at $86.77 a barrel, down about 74 cents. We're looking out for how oil plays out this week. It might have a weekly gain with the way the market is going, but it's starting off subdued this afternoon and in the morning. Well, let's take a look at the metals market now. We'll see gold prices rose, heading the best session in nearly 2 weeks as the dollar retreated before this week's key U.S. inflation reading that could influence the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision later this month. Spot gold climbed 0.3% to $1,924 per ounce, while U.S. gold futures rose by 0.3% to $1,948.40. Weaker dollar contributed to the gains. This according to the China International analyst. The worries about a German recession and the European slowdown certainly will have some safe haven supportive factor as well. We know when the market gets a little fearful, everyone runs to gold. All right. That's Business Incorporated today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. I'll catch you again tomorrow. Bye for now.